Welcome also to those at home who are joining us on Zoom. If you're attending for the first time, please go to our website and fill out the welcome card so we can know more about you. This morning's service about redemption is presented by Allen Avenue's Worship Committee. Lay-led worship is a tradition at this and many other Unitarian Universalist societies. At Allen Avenue, the Worship Committee either sponsors or presents one such service a month. On most other Sundays, services are led by our minister, the Reverend Tara Humphreys. And I have some other announcements here. The Our Power ballot referendum will be held on the main ballot in November. If you'd like a better understanding of what this referendum is all about, come to an informal presentation next Sunday, June 4th, here in the sanctuary. Jill Lindsay, who heads the Climate Change Issue Group at Musan, will give the presentation. There will be a notice later this week confirming the exact time of the presentation. And all of our summer services from June 25th to September 3rd are also lay-led, and our schedule is almost full. We need one more volunteer who can do a service on July 2nd. Or if you're interested in helping but don't feel up for creating a whole service, we have the option of using a pre-recorded sermon, and then you can fill in the pieces around it. Either way, if you're interested, please see Erica Bartlett as soon as possible. There she is right there. And today, you'll notice that the kids are not joining us this morning because they're going to be doing their second annual Trash to Treasure event outside. Everyone who helps collect trash goes home with a small treasure. Adults are also welcome to join them, and the event will go until about 11:15. If you're in the sanctuary this morning, we invite you to take the opportunity to silence your cell phones. I promise I'll do that as soon as I get down from here. And we're so glad you joined us. After the service, please join us for coffee and conversation outside or in the sanctuary. And now, let us center our hearts and minds with the ringing of the bell.
Hi, I'm Susie Hubley, and I'm a member of the Worship Committee. And this is For Every Time We Make a Mistake by Maureen Killeran. For every time we make a mistake and we decide to start again, we light this chalice. For every time we are lonely and we let someone be our friend, we light this chalice. For every time we are disappointed and we choose to hope, we light this chalice. And this is Thresholds by Arlen Goff. Thresholds, we cross them every day, from room to room, from outside to inside, and back again, from here to there, from everywhere, from anywhere to everywhere, from age to age. Each threshold offers an opportunity for change, for renewal, for transformation, from what we were and what we are to what we can be. In this hour and in this place, we cross a threshold from our day-to-day everydayness into space and time attuned to the other, to the sacred, to the holy, into an awareness of new life pregnant with possibilities. How will we be renewed in this moment? How will we be changed by this hour? How will we be transformed through this gathering of beloved community? Come, you longing, thirsty souls. Come, let us worship together. And our opening hymn will be number 323, Break Not the Circle. And please stand as you are able in body or spirit. Thank you.
This is We Gather to Remember by Nicole May. We gather to remember those who could not grow old, and those forced to grow old long before their time. We gather to mourn and grieve with one another all of our losses, the people, the stories, the loved ones, and the futures that could have been. We gather to do the hard work of facing the difficult realities of our present and our past, where there is conflict, violence, war, and hatred. We gather to hold space for silence as we try to make meaning of our history to help us work for peace and justice today. We gather to rekindle our source of hope for our future by recognizing in one another our shared humanity as we join in a concerted commitment for a better tomorrow. We gather because we need community to do all of this holy work.
My name is Erica Bartlett, and I've noticed that redemption stories abound in our culture, and not just in religion. Consider Darth Vader in Star Wars, Snape in Harry Potter, Scrooge in A Christmas Carol, and Andy Dufresne in The Shawshank Redemption. These types of stories are so popular that when I went online to look up examples of them, I got lots of results about how to write redemption stories instead. It got me thinking about why they're so popular, especially considering that redemption involves doing something most of us dislike, admitting to a mistake. But in these cases, it's not something minor, like forgetting it was your turn to do the dishes. The person being redeemed has to accept that they were fundamentally wrong about something that made up their identity, and then change their lives to make up for what they'd done before. Admittedly, this major transformation is very dramatic, which I think is part of the allure of redemption stories. They're filled with tension and then a satisfying conclusion. In real life, though, they're not necessarily as neat. I read about one such real-life example in the book Being Wrong, Adventures in the Margin of Error by Catherine Schultz. She shared the story of a man named C.P. Ellis, and it's a good example of why these stories are so compelling. In the late 1960s, Ellis lived in North Carolina and was the leader of his local Ku Klux Klan. Being in the Klan gave Ellis a sense of community, and also someone to blame, i.e., Black people, for a difficult life. And it's no doubt that his life was difficult. He had an alcoholic and abusive father, had to drop out of school in 8th grade to help his family, had a child who was developmentally disabled and blind, and worked hard every day but was barely able to make ends meet. All this made Ellis embrace the Klan, and he was so steeped in Klan culture that he even celebrated the death of Martin Luther King Jr. You might wonder, what would make a man like that change? Could he even change? Had you asked him that in the 1960s, he might well have scoffed at the idea. And yet, life happened. In 1970, the person in charge of efforts to fully integrate schools, which were still largely segregated, decided that it was necessary to have someone speaking for the white, poor, anti-integration members of the community. Ellis was a logical choice, and he agreed because he knew that, in reality, segregation was a lost cause, and this way he could at least represent his people. But the effort also needed representation for the impoverished and disenfranchised Black community members, and a woman named Ann Atwater was selected. As you might imagine, neither Ellis nor Atwater were particularly happy about working together. But then, when Ellis got a call saying he'd be killed if he kept working with Atwater, it actually made him committed to making their efforts work. And not long after, when he and Atwater were alone for a time after a workshop, he listened, really listened, when she talked about her concerns as a parent and as someone who had never had enough money. Ellis recognized that her concerns were the same as his, and he actually began to cry, thinking about both his struggles and hers. In that moment, everything changed. Ellis saw Atwater as a human being, and he later said, quote, "I began to see, here we are, two people from the far end of the fence, having identical problems, except her being Black and me being white. From that moment on, I tell you, that gal and I worked together good. I began to love the girl, really." End quote. Ellis had to acknowledge that despite what the Klan said, they didn't make things better for white people by fighting against desegregation. They only made things worse for Black people. After just 10 days of workshops, Ellis left his local Klan chapter and turned in his keys. Even though he got more death threats, and his children received threats and were bullied because of this change, Ellis couldn't turn back from what he now knew was right. And he didn't. Later on, after he'd retired from years of working as an organizer for the International Union of Operating Engineers, he said that his greatest achievement in that work was to help low-income African-American women get Martin Luther King Jr. Day off as a paid holiday. Quite a change for a man who initially celebrated King's death. Stories like this are powerful. Much as most of us don't like admitting when we make mistakes, we want the reminder that it's not only possible to learn from mistakes, but to change and grow from them, to become better than we were. More crucially, I think true life stories, like that of Ellis, empower us. We like them because they help us remember that even if doing the right thing is scary and messy and hard, it's still worth doing. And having those examples gives us the courage to attempt changes in our own lives. Perhaps not in as dramatic a way as Ellis, but even small changes add up. And in these days of so much division, it's encouraging to remember that sometimes people can truly change and redeem themselves.
Good morning. I'm Rick Kimball, a member of the Worship Committee, and I stand at the pulpit today to take your money away from you. We are a freely gathered, open, and welcoming faith community, supported by your contributions. Each week, 1/3 of our offering is given away to a nonprofit organization whose mission aligns with our Unitarian Universalist principles. This month's Share the Plate recipient is Youth and Family Outreach, a full-day, full-year nonprofit early care and education program serving children 6 weeks to 5 years of age and their families, with the primary goal to alleviate the effects of poverty, ensure children are prepared to succeed in K-12 education, and help caregivers complete their education and enter the workforce. Donations can be made now as the basket is passed through the donate button on our website, which is A2U2.org, or if you are a member, on Breeze. If giving through Breeze, please note if the donation is your pledge or a gift to our Share the Plate. You may also mail a check directly to the church. If you are visiting us for the first time this morning, please know that your presence is your gift to us. At this time, our offering will be collected and gratefully received. Good morning again. I am still Rick Kimball. And when I first started thinking about redemption, I focused on clink bags and the idea that if I were a beer bottle, I would first empty into somebody's belly, then get a quick rinse and go off to a redemption center to earn 5 cents that could compensate to somebody for a slightly fuzzy head and a bit of increase in girth. But I decided the redemption of the human soul is more important than the fate of booze bottles. Of human redemption, I now speak of being saved from the consequence of sin. I must know something about that, I decided, for I've certainly done my share of sinning. Some of it, by the way, quite enjoyable. And yet here I still am, not yet fueled for the fires of hell, which is said by some to be the consequence of unredemption. Avoiding such fate is a desirable goal, so redemption becomes important. But where does it come from? From God? Well, now there's a possibility. But God, we are told, set us up for original sin, the sin that everybody has from birth. And why would God wish to cancel God's own act? Perhaps we must rely on the government for redemption, but hey, the government is full of people piling up their own list of personal sins. No hope there, I decided, and went on to conclude that the only reliable source of redemption is the self of the physical individual, and the self of the joint individuals who form this congregation. For aren't we here to accept each other as who we are? To grant each other redemption? I believe so, even when forgiveness is tough because the sins involved are hurtful, like taking money out of the collection plate as it goes by. You think I didn't notice anybody doing that? But it's okay. You're redeemed. Well, back to the self and the less serious. If self-redemption be the goal, we should begin by listing our sins. So I turned to that tedious task. My list was long, but really quite dull. In booze terms, larger than the bottle of beer I mentioned, but smaller than a gallon of 90-proof gin. I guess I could grant myself redemption worth many times 5 cents, but still the thought felt hollow. My sins were all too common. Of course, there was the time, well, never mind. We won't go there. We'll leave it that my sins have all been somewhat common. To interest you and others in granting me redemption, I know I would need something more dramatic, which led me back to the concept of original sin. That's what I needed, an original sin, a sin never sinned before. Now there's a challenge. The politicians alone have left little fault undone, and the politicians are only a small, very small part of us. I reviewed my life looking for openings, and I landed on a moment in my early teens when my mother grew disgusted with my puns. She didn't call them sins, but she made it quite clear that they were bad, and she actually paid me $1 to stop doing them for a month. There it is, I decided happily. I need a new pun, as original as I can make it, to be a new sin for which I can ask the congregation to give me redemption. It must be as fresh as I can make it, something truly sinful, something that scrapes at the soul of my audience. Yes, I need a scintillating pun. And there, my friends, you have it. Redemption, please. And blessed be.
Amazing grace, how sweet
and I also am still Mike Luce. The title of my piece is Redemption, is questions about redemption, really. And the first question is, why are we, Unitarian Universalists, even talking about redemption? Any need for it seemed to me at first to be a little at odds with our belief in the salvation of all souls. But it turns out that although redemption is a pretty neat trick, it's not the whole shebang. Redemption is sort of like getting us back to ground zero after we screw up. The salvation of this thing is a step beyond. Of course, for Christians, redemption is granted or accomplished by God through Christ's sacrifice on the cross. But more broadly, we can consider it coming in other ways. And that left me with nothing but questions. For instance, I wonder if you can, as the saying goes, redeem yourself all by yourself, or if it requires that others agree. Do you have to sell them on it? I mean, who says you're redeemed? Do you need to be told by someone else, or is it enough, or even expected, that you'll know for yourself? What if you feel redeemed, but some others don't agree? Or even everyone else? What if everyone is telling you that you've redeemed yourself, but you still feel guilty? I know that one. If it requires that others somehow recognize or accept it, not just that you know it yourself, do you have to go public? What if your sin was something no one knew about? How would you redeem yourself then? Because no one's going to judge you if they don't know. I guess that sort of answers the question about redeeming yourself. But if your sins were public, specifically against me, let's say, then I'm going to feel like I have something to say about whether you're redeemed or not. If you stole from me somehow, but when discovered repaid whatever it was, I'm not going to necessarily consider you redeemed, just caught. If I believe you're truly remorseful and most likely won't do that or something like it again, then yeah, you're redeemed in my eyes, but I can't say about yours. What if you're less sure than I am? Are there degrees of redemption? A lot of it having to do with trust, both by the sinner themselves and by the victim and or the larger society. And what if the sinner, sorry to be using that word all the time, but it works, believes in their heart that they have redeemed themselves, but nobody else is buying it? This stuff gets complicated. And I guess they'd have achieved redemption of some sort, but literally, what do I know? They could just be conveniently delusional. There's a lot of that going around. And then there's the modern day equivalent of secular indulgences. Charitable donations by the rich and powerful, including their corporations, which are apparently people now. They're most certainly looking for us to agree that they are somehow redeemed. But they'd rather not tell us just what they might need redemption for. Personally, I kind of feel that redemption that's worth anything has to be mostly internal and ongoing. But, like I said earlier, what do I know?
Please join us for our closing hymn, number 205, Amazing Grace. You're invited to rise, embody your spirit, and hopefully the words will be on the screen as well as in your gray hymnal.
These are our closing words from Sarah York. We receive fragments of holiness, glimpses of eternity, brief moments of insight. Let us gather them up for the precious gifts that they are, and renewed by their grace, move forward into the unknown.